Hey guys, tonight we're going back, way back, to a place where time doesn't tick. It drips. It flickers. It glows faintly on a waxy wick. You're not in your bed anymore. You're wrapped in a woolen robe, feet cold on ancient stone, and the only sound is the soft pop of a candle in a corridor that's forgotten what noise means. You're in a monastery. And it's nighttime. Not the noisy kind of night with cars and fridges humming. This is deep night. Velvet dark. Where time is felt more than measured. The stars outside shimmer through narrow windows. And the whole building feels like it's holding its breath between centuries. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unusual, or it's 3:12 a.m. and you just needed background noise, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk slowly down a long hallway lined with candles. Each one is identical, spaced with mathematical precision. The air smells of beeswax, old parchment, and something faintly herbal, lavender maybe, or dried sage from the garden outside. Everything here feels like it was planned centuries ago, because it was. At the end of the hall, there's a heavy wooden door. It doesn't creak. It exhales. You step inside and find rows of beds, simple, clean, and filled with the quiet shapes of monks already asleep or deep in prayer. You wonder, how do they know when to wake? There are no digital alarms here. No chirping phones, no glowing numbers. Just faith, discipline, and wax. A monk stands near the altar, hood drawn over his head. Hands folded in silence. He moves slowly to a candle, checks something near its base, then walks away without a word. You look closer. There, in the melted wax, is a tiny metal pin stuck into the candle wall. It's angled just so. Beneath it, tied with string, is a tiny brass plate. You raise an eyebrow. Is that a mechanism? It is. This is your first glimpse into one of the strangest, quietest inventions in history, the candle alarm clock. Historians still argue whether this particular monastery in northern France was the first to use the technique, or merely the one that documented it most clearly. Either way, something about the stillness here tells you, this isn't just about cleverness. It's about devotion. Timing your prayer with flame, not with force. You glance at the monk again. He hasn't moved. But he knows when Matins will come. The candle will burn down, the wax will melt, the pin will fall, and the plate will clatter against a metal bowl with a tiny chime, soft enough to wake the faithful. Gentle enough to keep God's peace. It's such a small sound. But in a place like this, it's a revolution. You walk past the beds and toward a small window. Outside, the moon hangs low. Full and pale like a coin left by the heavens. Somewhere, an owl calls once. Then silence again. You imagine being here hundreds of years ago, wrapped in this same air. Hearing that same whisper of wax. No clocks. No schedules. Just the slow burn of commitment. Of routine. Of faith so practiced it can be timed by a flame. You press your hand near one of the candles. The heat is soft, warming your fingers without burning. It's slow and steady, just like the rhythm of this place. In this quiet world, one sleepy monk, just one, will grow restless. He will miss Matins once. Just once. And it will bother him. It will itch at his sense of order like a pebble in a shoe. He'll sit up in bed, stare at a candle, and wonder. What if the flame could ring the bell for me? And so, tonight, that's where we'll begin. You move through the corridor like a ghost, trailing the scent of candle smoke and linen. The floor beneath your feet is stone, cold and worn, with grooves in the middle from centuries of sandaled monks pacing the same paths. Above you, arched ceilings echo even the softest sigh. You wonder how many prayers have been whispered here, how many confessions absorbed by stone. You pass through the scriptorium, where monks copy manuscripts in near silence, and enter a small cloister garden open to the sky. Stars hover like suspended candles of their own. The wind carries the smell of time, and your breath fogs in the air. And then you hear it. Ding. Faint, metallic, and oddly precise. You follow the sound, and there he is, the drowsy monk. He stands in his cell, the smallest of rooms, no bigger than a closet. A wooden cot. A Bible. A pair of worn sandals. And near his pillow, a short, thick candle in a dish, a pin stuck through the wax like a toothpick in cheese, and beside it, a small metal bell tied to a string. He blinks slowly, stretches once, then smiles. You've just witnessed one of the first-time triggered awakenings in medieval monastic life. You sit in the corner quietly as he lights a fresh candle, inserts a new pin, and whispers something under his breath. Maybe it's a verse. Maybe just, "Please don't let it catch the blankets on fire tonight." Historians still argue whether this monk, whose name was never officially recorded, was an inventor, a tinkerer, or just really bad at waking up on time. But we do know that his community slowly adopted his method. Not because it was flashy, but because it worked. The monk found that by inserting a metal pin into a candle at a certain height, he could predict when it would fall, based on how long it took the wax to melt. The falling pin would then hit a metal plate, a bowl, or even a tiny bell, waking him at just the right moment for matins or lauds. You can almost hear his internal monologue. Sleep is holy, yes. But so is discipline. If I miss prayers again, Brother Cedric will assign me 3 days of silent dishwashing, and I swear by St. Jerome I won't scrub another onion pot in silence. So he turned to what he had, wax, pins, and string. You glance around his cell and spot more experiments, different candle shapes, metal weights, strings tied to doors and shutters. Even what appears to be a crude pulley system that probably knocked over a book once. Trial and error at its finest. The genius wasn't just the alarm, it was how gentle it was. Unlike modern alarms that blare like a fire drill, this monk's candle clock offered a soft sound, almost respectful. In a place of reverence, even invention had to bow its head. Over time, other monks began to copy him. You can picture them sneaking into his cell when he wasn't looking, measuring the wax, whispering about the clever brother who gets up without a poke. Of course, not all monks were thrilled. Brother Thomas, for example, believed real faith meant waking by instinct. He called the candle clock a crutch for lazy souls. But you and I both know, Brother Thomas just couldn't figure out where to place the pin. Within months, multiple cells had candle alarms. Some more elaborate than others. A few tried tying the falling pin to a small sack of pebbles that would tip when the wax softened. These usually woke up the monk and the entire hallway. One especially ambitious friar tried to attach his candle alarm to a pulley system that would pull open his shutters and let sunlight in. It worked once, then caught fire. So yes, there were challenges. You look again at the monk in his cell. He's writing something on a scrap of parchment. A chart, maybe. Measuring burn time. You wonder if he's the first medieval time scientist. Eventually, the abbot took notice. Not because of the invention, but because the early prayers started getting punctual. That's when things got interesting. The abbot doesn't knock, abbots rarely do. He simply appears at the threshold of the monk's cell, arms tucked neatly into his sleeves. Expression like someone who's just smelled something strange but hasn't yet decided whether it's divine or demonic. You freeze, unsure whether to bow, disappear, or explain the candle contraption smoldering beside the bed. The monk, however, doesn't flinch. He slowly stands, gestures to the candle and its brass bowl beneath. The abbot steps inside. Takes a moment. Observes the setup, pin inserted, flame steady, string taut like the nerves of a first-year novice. "What is this?" he asks. In the way abbots do when they already know exactly what this is, but want you to admit it out loud. The monk clears his throat. "It helps me wake for Matins. On time." The abbot raises an eyebrow. "You've been on time lately." "Yes, Father." "And your neighbor?" The abbot's gaze shifts to the wall. "He copied the method," the monk replies. Not proudly but factually. "With permission." The abbot pauses. Then, in a moment that feels oddly like divine neutrality, he simply says, "Show me." So the monk does. He walks the abbot through the setup. How a candle burns roughly 1 inch every 20 minutes. How he's tested different wax densities, wick thicknesses, and room temperatures. How he's even etched lines into the candle for visual reference. You half expect the abbot to declare it heresy, or innovation, or worse, efficiency. But instead, he picks up the little brass plate. Examines the string, and says something that sounds like a reluctant blessing. Historians still argue whether this was the moment the candle clock received ecclesiastical approval. Or whether it was simply a case of, "It seems harmless, carry on." Either way, it spreads. Soon, multiple monks are keeping wax-based time. One even writes a poem about it. "Let wax fall true, and time ring clear, that none may sleep through God drawn near." It's not terrible poetry, especially for a man who hasn't seen a metaphor in 20 years. You walk past another cell, this one more ambitious. The monk inside has constructed a tiered candle system. One candle lights another as it burns down, so the next prayer time follows automatically. You don't want to say it's the medieval version of IFT, but it kind of is. Elsewhere, someone has added scent markers, tiny bits of clove or lavender inserted at specific depths. So that as the candle burns, it releases a subtle fragrance, like the world's first scented reminder. Ah, cloves. Must be time for Vespers. There are, of course, critics. One brother complains that the sound of the bell interferes with the contemplative silence of the third watch. Another insists that if God meant us to use candles to mark time, He'd have written it in Psalms. To which someone else responds, He literally gave us light in Genesis. We're just scheduling it. By now, you're seeing candle clocks tucked discreetly into side chapels, study rooms, and even near the chicken coop. Brother Piers swears the hens lay better when sung to on schedule. Even the abbot admits his own candle burns near the lectern in the main chapel, just in case inspiration should arrive precisely at Lauds. And slowly, What began as one monk's sleepy solution becomes part of the monastery's rhythm. You stand in the chapel one evening and listen. Nothing. Then, gently, tink. One small chime. One monk rises. Then another. Then a door creaks open down the hall. The night flows forward, not with force, but with flicker. With faith that time, when lit with purpose, will keep burning steady. And that's when it hits you. In a world with no clocks, no alerts, no buzzing screens, this was brilliance. A way to measure what matters most, using the humblest materials available, wax, brass, and devotion. It wasn't just about waking up. It was about waking up right. You settle into a wooden bench in the chapel as another pin drops with a delicate ping, like a raindrop tapping glass. It's hard not to admire the balance, of wax, of weight, of quiet intention. No part of this feels rushed. And maybe that's the most startling thing of all, in a world driven by bells and bustle, here. Time is soft. Time waits for wax. You watch as the monk, yes, the original one, makes adjustments to another candle. He trims the wick carefully, like a barber for flames. Then scratches a faint notch into the side of the wax. A timing line. Nearby, a younger novice watches him with open fascination. The monk speaks in low tones, explaining burn rates, brass weights. And the crucial lesson: if it burns too fast, you'll be early. Too slow, and you'll wake with guilt in your bones. The novice nods solemnly, as though being handed a relic. That's when you notice something curious. Several other candles are nearby, not for prayer, but for tasks. One marks when to rotate loaves in the bread oven. Another times the steeping of herbs. A third, you overhear, is used by Brother Harold to limit the duration of his weekly baths. He always runs over, someone whispers. What began as a wake-up tool has quietly become a monastery-wide multitasker. Historians still argue whether the candle clock marked the beginning of mechanical time discipline in religious life, or whether it was simply one of many forgotten inventions created by necessity. But here, watching wax guide an entire community, it feels far from forgettable. You drift toward the kitchen, where another monk is tending stew. A candle burns on the shelf above the hearth, rigged with a tiny spoon tied to a pin. You tilt your head just in time to see the spoon drop into the pot with a gentle plop. The monk stirs. 30 minutes, he says. Give or take a sin. Even meals, it turns out, now burn to rhythm. Back in the cloister, you sit beneath the grapevine trellis and gaze upward. Moonlight glimmers off roof tiles as soft prayers echo behind stone. You imagine monks from other abbeys writing letters: "We hear your wax wakes well. May we borrow your method?" Indeed, the idea spreads, quietly, like most monastic innovations. Some abbeys begin crafting candles of exact weight and dimension, issuing them like time cards. Others create dual-wick versions that burn twice as fast, for those needing shorter reminders. And then there are the experiments, some successful, some, well, enthusiastic. One friar in Wales tries to create a double-chime candle. One pin falls halfway through to announce the hour. The other at the end. It mostly results in surprise naps. Another attempts to rig a wax-timed mechanism that swings a sensor automatically during Massachusetts. It swings. It smokes. It falls on his foot. Even still, the momentum continues. Wax becomes wisdom. You walk past the garden and notice Brother Elias watering herbs, a candle on a stump beside him. If the flame reaches the beetle carved here, he says, I move to the next row. You nod. Because now you understand, the candles aren't just tools. They're rhythm. They're pace. They're silent accountability in a world without urgency. A soft way of saying, now is the time. Without shouting it. Even the abbot, once skeptical, now carries a personal wax timer in his study. Rumor has it he uses it to cap his evening meditation. Others say it's to limit the length of Brother Cedric's weekly rambling confessions. As the night deepens, you return to the monk's cell. He's already preparing for Matins. Another candle. Another pin. Another brass plate. The ritual is exact, but unhurried. He looks up, as if sensing your presence, and offers a small smile. It's not about waking on time, he says, voice barely above a whisper. It's about waking well. And as you lie back on a borrowed cot beneath the rafters, the room glows softly. Time passing by flame, not by force. One pin. One prayer. One moment at a time. You wake, not because of a sound, but because of a scent. Warm wax. A trace of ash. The subtle perfume of old parchment and wool blankets. You open your eyes to flickering light, and for a moment, you don't know what century it is. You don't even care. Time feels syrupy here. And you're floating in it. Somewhere, far down the hallway, you hear the faint tap of a pin hitting a bell. It's Matins again, and monks begin rising like quiet shadows from their beds. No alarms. No urgency. Just ritual unfolding like petals at midnight. You follow them silently into the chapel, where candles line the altar. It's hard not to stare, rows upon rows of glowing, ticking timepieces, each one a slow-motion whisper. The monk is already at his place, eyes closed, hands folded. The same one who invented this system with nothing but wax, wire, and a mind too curious for pure silence. He doesn't look proud. He looks content. Like someone whose inner rhythm has finally synced with the outer world. You sit near the back, letting the Latin chants wash over you. The candle beside you dances gently in its dish, the pin above it already glistening with melted wax. You smile. Soon it'll fall. Not now. But soon. Historians still argue whether candle clocks were ever accurate. But here's the thing, they didn't need to be. Not down to the second. Not like our world with atomic clocks and calendar alerts. Back then, precision wasn't perfection. Presence was. You learn that most monasteries didn't count time in hours as we do. They marked it by prayer. The divine office, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. Each a breath in the lungs of the day. And the candle? It became the lungs' pace. You wander out after the service, back into the cool night. And spot something odd in the courtyard, a larger candle, thicker, marked not with numbers but symbols, an X, a fish, a small cross. It's taller than the rest. With multiple pins set at varying heights. You ask a passing novice, what's that one? He grins. It's for feast days. Each pin marks a different chant. When the pin falls, we switch verses. Of course it is. You walk further and find another monk deep in experimentation. He's melting small bits of different waxes, taking notes on how each burns, beeswax, tallow, even whale fat. His goal? A consistent standard burn rate. You don't know it yet. But this monk's obsessive notes will eventually be cited by scholars centuries later in a dusty treatise on pre-mechanical timekeeping. You pause beside his table, reading a few scribbles. Thicker wick equals faster burn. Layered wax equals uneven timing. Fat candle equals unstable pinfall. Name idea, bellum tempus, the war against lost time. You chuckle softly. Sleepy monks, dramatic Latin. A perfect mix. From a purely scientific standpoint, the candle clock is deeply imperfect. It can be influenced by drafts, humidity, wax purity, wick length, temperature. And yet, here it is. Still ringing bells. Still waking people. Still stirring prayers. And somehow, that's enough. You glance up. The stars are dimming. Morning is near. But the world hasn't rushed forward. It's coasted. Burned down in a gentle rhythm of wax and faith. A new monk lights a fresh candle for lauds. The old one nods silently and steps aside. You watch as he folds his hands behind his back and walks out into the dark, his work done for now. It's poetic, really. One small flame can still set 1,000 rhythms. And one sleepy monk, centuries ago, made sure no one missed their calling, not by yelling, but by letting time glow. You find yourself in the workshop now, a modest stone room tucked behind the cloister garden, where the scent of beeswax hangs thick in the air and every surface seems to shimmer with yellow residue. There are shelves lined with stubs of candles in every size, some hollowed out. Others embedded with pins, pebbles, and even bits of metal wire. This is the laboratory of our monk, the one who, with nothing more than necessity and curiosity, created the slowest timekeeper imaginable. He's bent over a wooden table, holding a pair of tweezers and gently adjusting a brass pin into the side of a thick candle. His hands move with care. And you notice his fingers are coated in layers of old wax, like sediment built up over seasons of quiet trial and error. He doesn't look up as you approach, just mutters, "This one's for sext. Should chime before the bell in the tower. Let's hope the draft from the window doesn't ruin it again." This is his 8th version this week. You realize something. This isn't about being clever anymore. It's about getting it right. Historians still argue whether this particular monk, known only as Brother Aurelius in one surviving scribble, truly invented the candle alarm. There are rumors of similar mechanisms in Buddhist temples, and fragments of waxy contraptions found in Arabic medical texts. But Aurelius didn't care for credit. He cared about timing his prayers, and making sure others could do the same. As he works, you see more of his collection, burned-out candles with meticulous markings, experiment logs written in Latin shorthand. A drawer of rejected pin designs. You spot one note that simply reads, "Too loud." Woke Brother Cedric early. Received glare. You smile. Even in devotion, a little passive aggression sneaks through. One candle on the far shelf catches your eye. It's enormous, almost half a meter tall, with multiple layers of wax in different colors. Aurelius sees you looking and sighs. That one was for all 8 canonical hours. A full day on a single flame. Nearly burned the roof. You glance up. The ceiling above it is indeed charred. He walks over and picks up a small copper bell. "This was the first one," he says softly. "It only rang once, but it was beautiful." He sets it back down and lights a fresh candle, watching the flame catch and settle into its familiar dance. For a moment, The room is still, just you, Aurelius, and the hush of burning time. Suddenly, from behind the curtain, you hear a muffled voice, "Brother Aurelius, your candle woke me 10 minutes early." Again. Aurelius winces. Still better than missing logs. He gives you a look, half exasperated, half proud, and returns to his notes. You step outside into the corridor, where a group of novices is gathered around a candle, debating pin placement like it's sacred geometry. You have to factor the breeze, one insists. No, it's the wick thickness, another counters. A third whispers, Brother Cedric sneezed and knocked the whole thing over yesterday. You realize the invention isn't just working, it's evolving. Spreading. In the dining hall, you pass a candle near the kitchen door. The cook glances at it nervously. "That one's for when the barley's done," she says. Or at least, when it should be. You pass another by the laundry basin. "Dry cycle," someone jokes. It's everywhere now. The candle clock isn't just about waking up. It's about living by feel, about giving time a body, a flicker, a breath. It's not mechanical. It's intimate. You sit beneath the archway leading into the chapel and watch a novice carefully light a timing candle for evening prayers. He looks up at the sky, calculates the light, then adjusts the pin slightly lower, his best guess for a 37-minute burn. Will it work? Probably not exactly. But in this monastery, that's not the point. Because the truth is, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be intentional.